Good morning, good afternoon, everyone in Europe and Asia. I hope everyone is doing well. So as we get started for this webinar, obviously, guys, let us know if you can hear me well. Introduce yourselves in the chat, please, as it's not just me in here, but also an amazing team who's moderating the chat. So we'd love to know where you're from, what you hope to learn today, how you ended up hearing about this webinar, etc. So hello, Vikas. Thank you for starting this. I'm going to wait a couple more minutes to see a few more replies and confirming everything looks good. I see Julie is typing, I see Hamid is typing, so hello guys, curious to know a bit more about you. And yeah, we're waiting a few more seconds to have a few more participants joining us this morning or afternoon, sorry. I'm in Brussels personally, so it's still morning here. I think for most of you, it's probably afternoon at this point. Yeah, I think we're gonna be able to get started. So, to begin with, let's talk about what I personally consider to be the greatest challenge in app marketing these days. So here you have the top 3 apps in India last Monday. They're all online shopping apps. And so at first you probably think, well, good for them. And what would be so hard for them to present their apps in the Play Store? And then when you look at it, all 3 are probably going to be advertising first how you can shop anything from fashion to groceries, including also electronics, home appliances, sometimes even more. So there's already a very wide, unique selling proposition in terms of what you can hope to achieve with these apps, which means already conveying how you can really shop anything and how you can, as a result, address any type of shopper, how you can engage with people who are very interested in buying fashion and others who have no interest in that at all, but are just here to find, to quickly shop groceries to have them home delivered. So on the merit itself, you can see, well, a lot of apps have different people they need to talk to. They have one store page, so it's already a challenge to get everyone under one roof, even though at this point we would say, well, at least we still have the same entry point. If you're going to the store looking for a shopping app where you can shop anything, well, you're still looking for a shopping app, right? Except that now I've explored a bit more the descriptions of these 3 apps, and some of the things I found included how with Amazon you get free entertainment with mini TV. With Misho, you get options to resell products that you bought. With Fastcard, you can buy through a loan system to make it easier to make different purchases. So the reality is that not only have apps many different customer personas when it comes to their main product, their main unique selling proposition, but also we now have apps that offer more than one benefit, and it's not just one key benefit that you then split into different sections. Sometimes it's literally multiple benefits in a single app. And so the biggest challenge we have in App Store marketing today is how can we engage with everyone? How can we engage with every prospect, every potential customer, if we have only one store page? So this is what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to go about how we can maximize success by playing on new features available in the App Store, in the Play Store, and how to overcome this limited real estate that has been at the heart of ASO for so long. Before I get there, in case you are not familiar with Apptweak, I will give a quick word about myself and my company. My name is Simon. I'm head of ASO at Apptweak. I've been at Apptweak for 5 years, trying to make sure Apptweak remains a leader in App Store optimization. And today, Apptweak is more than just App Store optimization, since we offer a suite of products going from ASO Intelligence to App Reviews Manager, Market Intel, APIs, Reporting Studio, search ads, and even consulting services. So if you're not familiar with us, very happy to have you exchange with our marketing team who are in the chat right now. And definitely feel free to reach out to see how we can help you some more. For today's session, since the question we want to answer is how to maximize store success with custom pages, we're going to go over first, why are custom pages so crucial? Then we'll go about how to build them. And what I should say here is not just how to build one, but rather how to build a strategy on custom pages. And I'll finish up with some practical tips for maximizing your success with custom pages. So if we get started, a question I always ask myself when I look into new features that Apple and Google release for their stores, it's why should this be important? So with custom pages, here, what we're talking about are landing pages, basically. It's been a feature available since the end of 2022 in the App Store. Google Play had an early version of the feature since 2021. However, I would still say the full-fledged feature on Google Play came out in 2023. Apple calls it custom product pages. Google calls it custom store listings. Personally, I will just talk about both under the same umbrella and call that custom pages. So custom pages basically are alternative store pages that will be served only to users who come from pre-established acquisition funnels. They will not be served at random. They will not necessarily be served to everyone. Actually, they should not be served to everyone. But the point is, these are alternative pages you can position as landing pages when someone clicks on a link that should drive them to the store. And the benefit is that by having these landing pages, you can divert a user from landing on your default page where your marketing message would maybe be your sort of vanilla flavor marketing message, and instead tailor the message you show to the acquisition funnel someone is coming from. So here I have an example from Deezer. Deezer is a music streaming service based in France, where they offer music overall, but they also have special features such as high quality music, games inside the app with blind tests. They have a song recognition feature. And so with people searching for these more niche elements of music on the store, having multiple pages allows them to build a case to users who may not necessarily realize how Deezer has more to offer than simply being a music streaming service like the others. Now, talking about the differences between the two stores, on iOS, CPPs are pages where you can only change the promotional text, screenshots, and or the video, meaning a lot of your page remains the same. You can have up to 35 pages. Each page can actually cover multiple languages, so don't feel like one page needs to be for only one language. And with CPPs, you can land on, with Apple, you can land on a CPP either by clicking a link, like hitting a URL and landing directly on the page, or through Apple Search Ads. These are the only two ways to work. They are compatible with ad networks through the URL version, but you cannot place a CPP simply based on country, for instance, etc. So you have limited options to lead users to your CPP on iOS, although these options are usually the most frequent ones. Something new that Apple introduced a few weeks ago is also the ability to deep link from your CPP to your app, which technically offers the potential of having different onboarding paths, not a single onboarding, and trying to maybe tailor the onboarding to the user funnel. If we turn to Google Play, with custom store listings, you can have up to 50. On a custom store listing, you can basically change anything or almost anything an app developer would be able to change. That means you can change your title, your short description, your long description, as well as your creatives. The only things you won't be able to change are your developer name, your app rating, and indications as to the data permissions you may access, the age rating, etc. What makes custom store listings quite challenging at times is that you can build many different types of custom store listings. You can build some with a targeting per country. This is something that's particularly useful when you have a special offer available for a single country, but that country's language is actually used in more than just a country. So to make it a bit clearer, imagine that you are running a special offer only in Colombia. The language you would use on the Play Store would be Spanish Latin America, but that language is also used for adjacent neighboring countries like Peru, like Argentina. And so if you were to use your default page on the Play Store, then the challenge would be, how can I show something only to people in Colombia? Well, a CSL is a way to go. Another targeting option made possible by Google is per user state. It's especially useful if you want to show a different store listing to inactive users. And so here, if we think about a game, the game default store listing probably shows a bit more early levels, is probably more comprehensive to help new players feel like they might want to join. But then inactive players may be convinced to download if they see more of the latest levels, latest modes added to the game. So here, adding a CSL for them might be a way to improve your conversion on that specific segment of users. Some more targeting options with CSLs include Google Ads campaign, URL, just like on the App Store. And also recently, Google added the options to show, to build, I should say, CSLs for specific keywords. So this is, I think, where ASO practitioners are most excited. The one caveat is that you should be aware of, though, is that you can only build CSLs for keywords that are part of a list that is pre-established by Google. You cannot just pick any keyword you want and build a CSL for it, at least not yet. Now, the last warning about CSLs is also that with so many different options to show a CSL to users, you may have conflicts between which CSL should show depending on your user's journey to the Play Store. So a word of advice: when you manage multiple CSLs on the Play Store, make sure to frequently review the priority order between your CSLs so that you know which pages shows first in case of conflict. If it's not clear already, if we want to talk more about the benefits of using custom pages, I think usually the first thing people think of is custom pages means being able to tweak creatives, to maybe tweak the metadata even, and make it more appealing, which means we're going to try to improve the download rates of our various campaigns, our various marketing efforts with these custom pages, try to get a better conversion rate than what we would get from the default for a specific campaign. If you have to sell people at your company on doing custom pages as part of a big marketing campaign, remember that any uptick in conversion rate also means lower cost per install if we're talking about paid user acquisition at the same time. For the same amount of clicks from the paid UA campaign, you arrive on the store, you get better conversions. That means you get more downloads from the same amount of clicks. In other words, you get lower CPI. Same logic applies also to ROAS as a result, because more installs probably means better return on ad spend overall. There are additional benefits to custom pages. First, I would say they are a special dimension when you look at your store console data. You can see your conversion rate, you can see your number of installs per CSL, per CPP. And that means that when you have certain acquisition funnels that are not easy to track, and here I'm thinking especially about web to app, having a dedicated custom page can actually help you shed some light on where a user, where a download came from. For instance, if we look at web referrer on the App Store, you may be able to see which web domain did someone come from. The caveat is that when you have multiple pages on your company website that lead to the App Store, you're going to end up just knowing, well, these web referral installs all came from our website, and you don't know which page. You don't know if it's someone who saw the subscription page and wants to go straight to being a paid user, or if it's someone who just discovered a special feature, someone who just saw your landing page, your home page, and just wants to download the app, but probably as a free user at first, etc. So there are additional things to unlock by having CPPs here. Last but not least, some things that can be attempted with CPPs is also to learn how you can shift your ASO efforts to not only get more installs, but actually get more active users, more paid users maybe. And that's something you can measure in general through looking at the evolution of your MMP data after you implement a CPP or a CSL. Alternatively, on iOS, since now we have the ability to add deep links, those deep links can actually include tracking options with can be tracked links, MMP links, for instance. And you could be able to see specifically in your MMP a campaign that came from a CPP and how it performed specifically on your in-app conversion events. So hopefully by now I've convinced you it's worth the effort, it's worth bringing up custom pages to stakeholders in your company and ask that they be part of all the different marketing efforts. And now we can talk a bit more about how to start building a strategy around custom pages. For me, there's two main ways to get started with how to build a strategy, how to build an overall approach. The first one is trying to be theoretical. This is what I call segmentation mapping. And so here, the idea is that we look at our entire audience, which is here represented by this magnificent pizza. And we're going to try and look at what are different ways we can divide our audience into multiple user groups. And at this point, I'm not going to necessarily consider at first if all the groups have the same size, all the groups are interesting or not. I'm just going to try and think about ways to cut, ways to divide my pizza in multiple groups. So you may think, well, this is how you cut a pizza. But then when we get creative, we can actually think about multiple ways of having that divide. So when we go with a theoretical approach to CPPs, to CSLs, what we're going to do effectively is try to review what are different ways we could segment our audience divide it in multiple segments, and then try to assess how relevant these are. So enough talk of pizza. Let's look a bit at theoretical typical methods. So with segmentation mapping, I think the oldest version of segmentation is usually demographics. It's basically trying to divide your audience based on gender, based on age, based on marital status, family size, income, etc. This is a segmentation that can be quite easy to do in terms of ad networks, where you can target the different segments you create with this type of segmentation. It's not always relevant for apps, but there are apps where there's clear differences by dividing your user base by gender, for instance. And so here I have the example of fitness, where you can see that the same app has very different looking pages, I would say, in terms of whether the target is a man or a woman. The second approach, historically, segmentation is by geography. So when it comes to App Store and Play Store, this mostly doesn't make sense, to be honest, simply because most of the time we are having this option through just languages and local targeting in the default page, but it's not always perfect. As I mentioned before, there are certain languages that are served in multiple countries. So sometimes you will need to have a CSL per country. Sometimes, and I think this is specific to certain apps, but you may want to even go towards hyper-localization. And so here, an example I would give is if you're a food delivery app, being able to have a custom page for multiple cities where you operate in and showing the top-rated restaurants of each city rather than just present the same options across an entire country, that could make a lot of sense. Personally, I'm French, and I can tell you that if you present to someone in the south of France a food delivery app that shows restaurants from Paris, at best they will ignore the fact, thinking, well, this is just how the store works. We know that people like Paris gets first. But some people may say, actually, I'm not interested. This app is not promoting any restaurant that I can actually order from. So this is a segmentation where I think you have to consider if it makes sense for you. It's not always that interesting, but it's still important to know about it. Now, the segmentation method, I think, is most useful in app marketing, in game marketing, is looking at user behaviors. So here it requires working with a product manager a lot of the time. It can require working with your marketing research team as well. But it's knowing about what are the features, what are the contents as well that people engage with, and do they where do they differentiate themselves? Where does the audience split into different groups? So here I have an example from Amazon Prime Video, where in the US, one thing they offer is actually live streaming of Thursday Night Football. If you're a big American football fan, then you're definitely going to react to this well. But now, if you're like me and you're thinking Amazon Prime Video is about TV shows and movies, then you may end up preferring the default option. So in here, again, it's all about working with other person internally to understand how do users break off into different groups. The last segmentation method I will bring up as part of the theoretical ways you can start looking at how to divide your audience into different groups is called psychographics. With psychographics, what is going to be the main consideration for how you break people in different groups is not so much how they behave as the motivators, what will drive them to download your app. These can be personal values, these can be more practical motivators. And here, that usually leads to designs that are more towards emotions than practical benefits. I couldn't include an example on the slide for the sake of brevity, but what you have instead are two different frameworks for psychographics. The first one is from Game Refinery. So it's if you're looking to work with psychographics to come up with different segments from a player base. Here you have options where certain gamers are more interested in the social aspect, sometimes by working together, sometimes by competing. Other gamers are actually not interested at all about playing with others, and they are more leaning towards escapism, towards self-expression, towards exploration, etc. For apps, there is no official or very well-researched framework. As a result, I actually decided to build one of my own. This is completely experimental. I invite everyone to consider it, but also be critical of it. Take it with a grain of salt. But it's true that when you look at the apps on your phone, you can see that some apps you may download with the purpose of being social. I think a lot of messaging apps, for instance, but not always. And then there's apps where you may think the obvious motivator could be, let's say, discovery or self-development. And here I'll speak of a personal example, which is Duolingo. I personally use Duolingo to learn Polish at the moment. But the truth is, my motivator is not learning itself. It's not self-development, it's socializing. And that's because my fiance is Polish. And so I want to be able to speak with her friends in their native language. So my actual motivator is not learning, it's socializing. And that's sort of the way you can look at psychographics as a way to break your users into different groups. It's to say, what are different stories, what are different things that are going to resonate with them, and how could I approach them with a different message based on their motivator. Now, there is a different way to go about custom pages, and that's also to be empirical. So here, instead of just going to sort of a large marketing playbook and just thinking of what are all the ways I could divide my audience into different groups, what we can do instead is just say, look at what are the most obvious groups, what are the situations in which it's very clear a certain group is behaving differently from the overall stats, the overall group, and start building a custom page for them, and then move on to the next group. So in that case, what we do is segment identification. And it kind of looks like this. At least ideally, what we end up doing is just saying, we're going to try to build one custom page for each segment we will end up identifying. One way to get started with that is to look at campaign data. This is definitely something that can seem easier to do at first. With the theoretical approach, it requires a certain amount of time just spent just brainstorming. You don't necessarily know how well you're going to be able to target people in the end. So if we take the problem backwards, we can also look at people that are already being targeted, look at the conversion rates of our different campaigns, and just consider that if the conversion rate is particularly low, it's particularly below the average we have when we look at the entire store page, then we may benefit from adding a custom page. So the example you have here is something I've done for multiple clients, where using Apple Search Ads, what I do is I get the impression share report. It's a report in Apple Search Ads that allows me to see for each search term, each keyword that their ad ended up appearing for, what were the amount of impressions, taps, installs that I got. And what I do here is just say, well, I just use a bit of Excel conditional formatting to highlight the keywords for which my app did get a minimum amount of taps, in here 20, just because I want to make sure I'm building CPPs for a segment that's actually decent in terms of size. And then I look at what keywords have less than 50% installs compared to the amount of taps. That's basically examples in terms of numbers. It's not a magic formula, but what this does is basically help me single out keywords that are not performing very well right now, and then I can look at them to see do they have any things in common, and what are potential ideas that I could formulate by looking at the keyword and say, I see why the default page is not convincing enough for the people who would be searching this. Now, there is one caveat with this method, which is that in here, we're assuming the poor conversion is due to the creatives not being at their best. It's often true, but be careful about the fact that even with the best creatives ever, sometimes your campaigns also have just poor targeting and will still appear to perform poorly in terms of conversion. So you have to be cautious about the improvement you can eventually deliver to every single campaign. More ways to do to be data driven and to identify segments that may benefit from custom pages rather than your default is looking at ASO data points. So some of the data points I would single out in ASO, keywords. Here, keywords, we can break keywords in terms of different clusters, different themes. We can also look at them in terms of volumes. Volumes tell us what is the size of the audience linked to a particular keyword. So if you're a racing game and you look at what are the different clusters under racing, you might see drag racing, you might see motorbike racing, you might see truck racing in terms of games that have different audiences. So you can kind of see what are different appeals. You can research also in terms of app clusters, looking at the different profiles of games in your category. What do they already show? What are things that I should show because these are what people expect? What are ways I could also try to stand out from this cluster, etc. And finally, the third data point that I really encourage people to look at more is user reviews. For that sake, I'll actually share a story with you, which is a story of how we built at Apptweak the first CPP of SoundCloud. SoundCloud was curious about what would be a way to improve their conversion in general. And we started by going through their user reviews. We built an algorithm that allowed us to identify particular topics in their user reviews. And we saw that one topic in particular was people saying, you can skip as much as you want without being asked to pay for a subscription. This was not something we necessarily expected, but then we realized what it meant. These were people who were saying the free tier of SoundCloud feels better than the free tier of other music streaming services because you don't have the same limit in how many tracks you can skip before you're just told either you pay for more or you wait an hour. So what we did with that information was to say, well, obviously this is not something we want to advertise to anyone, but if someone is looking at Spotify, let's say, or another competitor, and they don't know that they're going to have this limit, well, we're going to tell them SoundCloud is better than Spotify because of this particular thing that users have been telling us. So we built the CPP you just see here. We literally used it in Apple search ads for our competitor campaign. And we basically multiplied the conversion rate, the ratio from impression to downloads of the campaign by 1.6, which in turn means that to reach the same amount of installs we got through the period we studied, we basically managed to save 39% of budget that would have been needed otherwise. Now, I'm actually having one more option for being empirical. This one is honestly a bit more of being proactive. It's not as based on data points as the other three we've seen, but it's when you can anticipate certain moments where the marketing team would just benefit from the extra effort. And so here, the main example is with seasonality, where, for instance, if you're having your default page, you may not want to change it all the time. You may not want to always adjust it to seasonality. Maybe with certain campaigns, some campaigns are only available to certain users, but having a CPP means you can better align the message across the different moments of the user acquisition funnel. And so our example here is just with CNA doing a CPP on Black Friday, but you could imagine that with any kind of shopping app, for instance, doing special campaigns and making sure that they show the same type of CPP, the same type of creatives between the ad that lead people to the store and on the store, and eventually driving to the app install and the user onboarding. That means by now you hopefully are starting to have a lot of ideas for how to look at your audience, how to already research places where you could be doing CPPs right now. And that means that it's time to tell you it's important to build a custom pages backlog. When you build a strategy that includes CPPs, you're likely to end up with many different ideas, and the whole challenge becomes, which one should I do first? So for that, my advice is, first, don't consider there is one best way to approach CPPs. It's not pick one segmentation method and stick to it and only do that one. It's not only go empirical, never consider things outside of what can already be observed in your data. In practice, just look at what makes the most sense, and then make a lot of hypotheses, make a lot of notes for how you could try to build a custom page. And before you start building, just score every option in terms of what is the reach you can expect from the custom page. How many people do you expect to land on the custom page? And that means already having an idea of how the people are going to be targeted and eventually end up on the custom page. Some segmentation could speak to some segmentation methods can help you identify pages that would be amazing and that would speak to a lot of people. But if you can't target them easily, then actually the reach of the custom page is going to be very low, and it may not be as interesting to build that page as doing something else. The second thing to consider in your backlog is what is going to be the impact you expect to see out of the CPP. How different is it going to be from the default page? Like based on what is the current conversion rate of the segment for with the default listing, what margin of improvement do you have? Where will you eventually land by having a custom page, to see also, well, if you expect a certain improvement in conversion rate, you can start making projections in how many installs will this bring after a month. And basically that can even help you calculate the potential cost per install from building the CPP. Further scalability. Some CPPs, some CSLs may not sound like great ideas based on reach and impact at first, but then you can end up figuring out that a certain design can be reused for multiple other pages. This is the example we have on the slide here with Babbel, where they actually built a design. I think initially it must have been for German, but they actually realized we can do this CPP for all the different languages that people are searching on the App Store, all the CSL that people with languages people are searching on the Play Store. And so here, the scalability was also an important factor, because while building the first one probably took some effort, building all the next ones must have been very fast, as they only needed to have some of the elements being translated, especially showing different language, a different flag, and then a few different words inside the UI showed in the screenshots. That also means link to scalability is the effort needed. When you make a creative backlog, whether for your default pages or your custom pages, consider also that sometimes the idea you have that will have the best reach and impact may require a lot of resources. Let's say you want to add a video. Videos can be great, but usually they take time to produce. So you can also be opportunist by looking at what's the CPPs that's a very low effort to start building, and do that one first, just because it's not going to slow down the progress on the other CPPs. So this is basically where I hope you're having a lot of ideas. Before I take a few questions, I'm going to share some practical tips that I think are important. The first tip is take into account the user context, the user interface in which your CPPs, your CSLs are going to be seen. So here I want to share an example of one of my favorite CPPs, which is from NordVPN. So what you see here are two CPPs that have been used by NordVPN. The first one is used when people search for free fast VPN. The second one is used for when people search for Norton. And in my opinion, if you're just looking for any VPN, the first one looks much better and more appealing. The one on Norton doesn't do as well of a job, I would say, when it comes to conveying a unique selling proposition. But what I love about that Norton-related CPP is actually that the people who have designed it have realized that presenting a USP doesn't matter as much as acknowledging that people were actually searching for someone else. And so they take that user context and grab the attention of people. They still have some screenshots that are going to start building a case for why you should be using NordVPN. But before they start making that case, the first thing they do is just make sure that you stop what you are doing, stop beelining to wherever you can find the Norton app by showing you a quick, somewhat funny message saying, oops, looks like you were trying to spell NordVPN wrong, and kind of capture your attention, makes you willing to hear what they have to say next. So that's something important. The example here is when you target a competitor's keyword, but there are way more cases where you can have the same sort of approach to say, what's the context in which our user will have landed on the store? What's their mood, and how can we kind of make sure we make them susceptible to hear how we want to pitch our app? Link to user context can also be user interface. So here I'm going back to Deezer with another example. But something I care about a lot in the design of creatives is always being aware of how it's going to look like. It's when does the page appear, but also how does it look like? And so what I want to show you here is how Deezer has been smart about how, instead of having the same exact design between iOS and Android, between the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store, which is what you're seeing right now, what they actually did is they changed the format of their creatives on Google Play to make something that just has better value based on the way Google Play shows creatives. They made a small change, but suddenly reading this value proposition of find any tune in seconds is especially efficient. Another advice I have to give to people who are going to be spending a lot of time building custom pages is being careful about how you're going to measure success and remember to keep testing with custom pages. Something that you can do easily in the context of the App Store is to compare the conversion rate of your default page with the conversion rate of your custom product pages. I think you can do the same on the Play Store console as well. In both cases, I will implore you, do not do it by default. There are certain moments where it can make sense, but remember, the default page is shown to everyone who doesn't see a custom page, which means any type of user funnel that you haven't mapped. Every user comes to the store with a certain readiness to download your app. So if my default page is shown to the people who search for my brand name, and I have a custom page who is shown only to people who search for one of my competitors, I'm sure the custom page can actually have tremendous impact, but it's still important to realize people who search for your brand name are more likely to download your app no matter what than people who search for a competitor. So if you want to measure the success of a custom page, don't compare the conversion rate of the page to the conversion rate of the default. What you need to do instead is, if you can, do an A/B test to measure what is the likely uplift you can have. So this is something you can do on some of the custom store listings you build on the Play Store. If you can't do that, for instance, on the App Store, you cannot have an A/B test on your CPPs, then what you can still do is a sequential test where you set up the custom page, but actually show the same creatives, the same promotional text as the default for 1 or 2 weeks, just to get your baseline, have an idea of what is the exact conversion rate you can expect from the segment you're now targeting if you keep showing the same thing as a default. And then after 1 or 2 weeks, change to the assets you actually want to show on the custom page and measure the improvements then. That's something that can help you really isolate how having a custom page has a big impact on your conversion rate, because your conversion rate is more local at this point. It's really focused on a single segment. The last advice is, once you've done that, once you've seen that success, remember that success is not final. And so some of the things you can do is, one, consider if you can replicate your success. If what you've done is using a certain design type, try and test the same design on other segments, for instance. Here, my example is with Nerd AI, where if you look carefully, the screenshots are almost exactly the same, but based on which segment they're targeting, they're sometimes changing the copy a little, and they're also switching the order of screenshots to show what people will react to better. So when you're looking for a writing assistant, having something that says, this is a perfect essay with, this helps you write the perfect essay, it's going to be more important for someone who's looking for an app to help them with homework that are really linked to essay writing, whereas someone who's trying to have help with homework on math is probably not looking for how to write an essay, but more about, can you help me solve this equation, for instance. That logic of making a successful design more scalable, using a successful design for the next custom page experiment you want to build, is also something you can do on your default. When a custom page actually improves the conversion rate of a certain segment compared to the default creatives you had for that segment before, the question that remains is, are the new creatives working only on the people from that particular segment, or could they work on everyone? So again, in here, once you see a win, discuss when it makes sense to maybe test the same kind of assets on other segments, sometimes without any adjustment at all. It can still work as well, because sometimes the win really comes from just having nicer looking creatives, and it's not about having the creatives speak only to a particular segment. If you want to go into more details with the entire topic, I wrote back at the end of 2023 a comprehensive guide to custom product pages and custom store listings. There might be a couple of things that need updating, since Google especially added a few things recently to custom store listings. But still, if this is something where you want to have more resources, I invite you to download the guide that we published on Apptweak's website. You can scan the QR code, you can head over to our website, look for the guide, and find it there. That's it for the presentation. Since we have some time left, I'll look at some of the questions you guys have today. You can also head over to the chat and or to the question box to share this. So Julie is asking, do we know when Deep Link will be available? I was under the impression you could already add deep links to your CPPs on iOS, but I may be wrong. So if that's not the case, then I'll make sure we look into it and get back to you after the end of the webinar. Anmol is asking, preview video not showing in any listing. You're having an issue basically showing a video in what I assume would be a CSL. I would say if that's the case, maybe check if the video is listed on your YouTube channel, and if it's possible that ads may run on the video. When you want to add a video on Google Play, you need to make sure that the video is not monetized so that no ads would be shown in the Play Store. Hanvi asks, are CPPs displayed to users who search for a relevant term, or is it only for ads and external links? On the App Store, it's only for ads and external links. The one benefit being still that if it's on a keyword for which you have not only you're not just using Apple search ads, but you're also ranking high for that keyword organically, the CPP will still show for people who scroll down and open your App Store product page through the organic and not just the ad. But it only works if you have an ad on that keyword. Julie asked, do you see similar results on the App Store and Google Play Store? The question is a bit broad, but I would say it depends on a lot of factors. First is the targeting the same? Second is, are you adjusting the design of your pages for the differences in store UI? You have to remember that on the Play Store, the screenshots only start showing once you get to the page, not in the search results, for instance. So that's definitely something different. In keyword store listing, does the description keyword matter? So for custom store listings, the description is always something you can optimize. I would say it's a very low priority because most people do not spend time reading long descriptions on Google Play. Now, you can still play about this. If you're thinking your custom store listing is targeted at people who will be looking for specific details, then it actually makes sense to work on the description and address them there. If you're thinking of using a custom store listings description to add more keywords for ASO purposes, that's where I would say it's good to test it. I don't expect it's going to have a lot of success just because the CSL is not supposed to show by default, except in the case of CSLs per country. But there's a lot of ramifications there, so I'm afraid the answer is really depending on the type of CSL you're using. Question from Assad: does having season-specific CPPs mean sending the algo in learning phases every time you upload new ones? The algorithm on the App Store technically does not look at your creatives. So there's not the same type of learning phase, except if you're using CPPs in conjunction with a discovery campaign, a search match campaign in ASA. But in most cases, your CPPs will not influence the keywords for which the CPP is going to appear for. Only Play Store custom pages are shown for search traffic too without running ads. Yes, that is our assumption. With, again, that particular limit of on the Play Store, you can add CSLs for certain keywords, but only keywords that have been pre-selected by Google for you. I think we're about done with the questions. So thank you everyone for bearing with me in this webinar. I hope this was useful to you. Feel free to share with us any feedback you have about the presentation, about the content, about the questions, and have a great day, guys. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.